Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue working day, and I invite to the microphone Colonel Andriy Lysenko, official spokesperson from the Ministry of Defense. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Please listen to the information about events in the hostility area during last 24 hours. Near Lugansk yesterday there was 5 enemy shellings, and out of them 4 were from heavy weaponry. The occupants violated ceasefire regime near Lopaskina, Krymske, and near Popasna. They launched more than 20 shells from 122mm guns over our positions near Donetsk. The combat activity are along the entire front line. The most fierce shelling was traditionally in Avdiivka. It lasted for 4 hours. And besides small arms, the occupants used mortars in the same positions. 2 more mortar shellings were held by enemies near Verkhnetarets. In early evening, there was a strike between ATO forces and the occupants. Within 1 hour, they several times opened fire from mortars. The combat lasted around 50 minutes. The enemies were forced to repel, but we experienced also some losses. Near Troitsky and Butovka mine, there were mortar enemy shellings, and near Lugansk and Novgorodsk, they used armored machinery. Around Donetsk, during last 24 hours, there were 17 enemy shellings, and out of them from heavy weaponry, and 1 combat strike. Around Mariupol, the situation remains without changes. There are no quiet zones along this contact line. Yesterday, the most intensive shellings were near Krasnogorievka, Marienka, Staroknativka, and between Pavlopol and Shirokina. As in the previous days, the enemies use mortars and AIVs. The ATO forces were forced to open fire in response. During the last 24 hours, near Mariupol, 31 enemy shelling was registered, and out of them 9 were from heavy weaponry. During the last 24 hours, in result of military actions, 1 Ukrainian serviceman was killed and 8 were wounded. We express our condolences to the family and friends of the perished servicemen. Due to aggressive and adventurous tactics, the enemies experienced heavy losses. Thus, 12 bodies were delivered to the morgue.
From Russia, another batch of the support for militants arrived. 2 echelons with military equipment and material, technical means for military action. 6 containers with fuel materials arrived to Ilovaisk. 7 wagons with ammunition to Kharkiv. 2 with food products and 1 with winter clothing to Kharkiv. Ukrainian side of JCCC stated that illegal armed groups refused to give the guarantees of security for repair workers, which have to work in some industrially important objects. This is Avdiivka coking plant. Bakhmutsky Agrarian Union gas distribution plant in Krasnogirivka and the plant in Novogorodsk. Such actions of Russian occupational forces not just strengthen the suffering of the civilians, but also threaten the region with environmental disaster. We would like to remind that dozens of the plants on the occupied territory are either cut for scrap metal or taken to Russia. In other words, they're stolen. The time of the operation of the checkpoints at the contact line is reduced because of the transfer of Ukraine to winter time. Now they will be operating from 8 to 5 p.m. Yesterday in Mariupolski police prevented the attempt to bring the ammunition to peaceful territory of Ukraine. At Mangush, the law enforcement officers, during checking of the car, found the cartridges, 3,000 of cartridges in caliber 7.62 and 5.45 millimeters. As the owner of these cartridges explained, he exchanged it for personal use. The battalion of Marines returned to Mykolaiv from ATO. The Marines spent a year and a half in the front. During the ceremony, 5 Marines received state awards of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The Order of Bogdan Khmelnytsky of the third degree was awarded to the widow of the senior Sergeant Pavlo Vozhdev, who was killed at the front line on the 18th of July 2016. The senior Sergeant Vozhdev served for 15 years in the armed forces of Ukraine. Thank you. Now the questions. Channel 5. Could you please tell about the killed person and the wounded near Avdiivka? There were also some losses. Could you in detail tell about the shellings in Avdiivka and the rest? One killed the serviceman during the military clash in Verkhnyotaretsk. All those who were wounded, they were wounded during the shellings. 4 in Avdiivka, 1 Shakhta-Butevka, 1 Verkhnyotaretsk, and 2 in Lugansk. Thank you. Once you have no more questions, this is the end of the press conference. The next event will take place at 1 o'clock.